Welcome everyone to the Distributed SQL Summit. The talk for today is Scalable Product Mappings with Yugabyte DB. I am Divya Goyal, working as an engineer in Walmart Labs. Ashish will be presenting with me. So Ashish, you would like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Ashish Kapoor. I work in the platform engineering team with Walmart Labs.
Cool. So I'll go ahead. So we'll be covering following areas: product identification, the problem that we had that we were looking for a good database to fit our use case, the features of the Yugabyte DB that fit for our use case, the scale at which we are operating, and how did we productionize and the challenges faced during productionization. Ashish will be covering on that. We will take the Q&A in the end. Product identification. So in the product setup journey, we have various microservices that is responsible to enrich the product, like content related or image related. Product identification is also part of the product setup. Product identification specifically is responsible for uniquely identify the products using the strong keys. So like GTIN, ISN. So when seller submits the content, we don't have a duplicate product, but we are able to identify the same product. Apart from being a consistent DB, the important characteristic that we are looking for is linear or exponential data growth. As the Walmart catalog size increases, we are onboarding more sellers. We want to have to be scaled for that growth. Low latency reads. We will have various consumers, various reactive API consumers, and Walmart.com site. So for the Walmart.com site, we want to be able to serve in a low latency. So these are some bits and pieces of the product page of Walmart.com site that I've put together. So as we can see, there are various sellers for this Fitbit product. So out of these sellers, how do we uniquely identify that all these sellers are trying to sell the same product, like Walmart and the seller heart rate monitors, right? So when we try to map these seller offers to a product, we use those strong keys to map so that we don't create duplicates and we are able to have the same products. The product relationships, supplier trade item, like this item is also sold on a store. So these are some of the other mappings for which also the solution to have the ski mapping that we were looking for. So there are various use cases as we can see in Walmart that we are looking for. Yeah. So the key DP features for product identification service that are important for us is cloud agnostic, cloud compatible. We were looking for something that could deploy in various clouds, different cloud providers. We could use a hybrid cloud combination of a private plus a public cloud. And so the solution has to be cloud agnostic. The geo replication with the different markets that Walmart support to be able to have the deployment of region across different regions, across different countries, and to be able to have business continuity and disaster recovery. So in case of any issue happen, we are able to uh, connect with another region and get the data. High read write throughput, cost effective. We'll talk further in detail about alternate key lookups in our next slides. Multi-key transactions are also very important for us because as we have different keys that we want to insert in our database, we wanted a transaction that could be across shards. The full consistency, so no data is partially visible across different shards. Yeah. So product identification journey. So how we started, like we were using Oracle 6 year back. And when we were started with Oracle, our model was a lot simplified. We had single key mappings. There was one-to-one relationship. Given a key, we want to get an ID. Given an ID, we want to get a key. So when we moved to Cassandra, our data size also started growing. The complexity also started increasing. We used lightweight transaction to ensure that the key is only pointing to one ID. And we created two tables to get key and ID lookups. Application overhead started increasing because we wanted to do multi-row inserts. If any issue happened in between, the application has to take care of rollbacks. There was complex data model was created that and application has to run various analytics job to find the inconsistencies that was created and to roll back those consistencies and to fix the data so that our customers are not impacted, because if we have wrong mappings, the Walmart.com customers will be impacted. So last year we decided to move to Yugabyte. The data model was a lot simplified. We had a single key, single table to do both the primary key lookup and the secondary key lookups. The data became consistent. We had no app and operation overhead. So this is the other products that we use in our Walmart.com, basically product setup that I mentioned, the product setup pipeline that we have, where we have various different microservices. Those microservices were already using Cassandra, Azure, or Cosmos. So we try to compare the other solutions that we are already using, the other databases that we are already using with the Yugabyte. And we try to compare with the key features that we are looking for: geo-replication, cloud agnostic, multi-row assets, and Yugabyte look to be a good fit for our use cases. So we move ahead with Yugabyte. I'm not going to dig further into this comparison, but if you guys have any question, we can take in the Q&A. So I want to highlight a couple of Yugabyte features, the primary key and secondary key. So as I mentioned, we created a single table to be able to do primary key lookups and the alternate key lookups using secondary index. Internally, Yugabyte create another table for each secondary index. We included all the columns that we needed in a secondary lookup as part of our secondary index. The reason being, we don't want a Yugabyte to do a two lookup. As for metadata column, if we didn't include it in our secondary index, then it has to do a lookup into a primary table. And Explain was a very good tool for our developers to understand if it is an index only scan versus it's a index and primary table scan. Yeah. And the another feature was very important for us was Yugabyte offers YSQL and YSQL both. YSQL was a good fit for us as we were moving from Cassandra, it was Cassandra API compatible. We got better performance as it was cluster and topology aware. So there was no hop needed to get to a shard. And we could do local DC reads, follower reads, right? YSQL is also a very interesting area that we wanted to look into our future, as we could do joins and all. So for a future use case, we'll consider even exploring YSQL. Multi-region deployment is another key thing that we need for all our deployments. And we made one region to be a preferred region because we wanted to avoid the cross DC communication, basically cross round trips. So if we have a secondary index and the primary key on the different shards, and these shard leaders are actually located in different regions, then it has to do a cross DC. And since our cross DC times was higher, so we wanted to avoid any cross DC leader communications. So for that, we use preferred leader as one region, all the preferred leader in one region. Yeah. So now I want to dig a little deeper into our architecture. So we have in the product setup, we have various different microservices using reactive framework, having different technologies that they are using, some using Spring Boot versus Akka Stream, and using different databases. So all these services, the product identification is one of the service. The product identification service is responsible to write to the Yugabyte cluster, where we have 3 region cluster, 1 region being preferred leader. We are using a CQRS pattern for separating our read and write traffic. So we are able to get the consistent product mappings for product identification through this product identification service writing to its own set of cluster. For the read serving cluster, we have unified product mapping, which is responsible to collect different kinds of mapping: product identification mapping, product relationships, could be supplier, trade, item mappings, offer mapping. Also the mapping across systems or transitive mappings. All of those mappings, we are having another cluster, which is unified product mapping, which is a serving cluster. The Akka stream also that we are responsible for writing, we are deploying in Kubernetes so that we could scale it. And we have different consumers like Walmart.com site and different reactive API consumers to consume from this cluster and give the data in a low latency. So let's further zoom into this product mapping cluster of unified product mapping. So the primary cluster of this is very similar to product identification. We have 3 region cluster, 1 region being preferred leader. We are using distributed storage there. Backups are running periodically. And this cluster is doing a sync write to the read replica cluster. Read replica cluster is a hybrid cloud model. We are having different private and public regions there. Also, this cluster has different replication factors. We are trying to have more replication in every region so that if any node goes down, we don't have to do a cross DC reads and we could get the data from the same region in low latency. We are also exploring NVMe SSDs here if the data loss issue won't be there because we have a primary cluster which is using a distributed storage. So the reason we are trying to expand this read replica in multiple regions because we want to support geo-replication, different markets, and we want to be co-located with our clients so that the clients can do follower reads and read from the same region. The follower read is not just supported in read replica, it's supported in primary cluster also. The scale at which we are operating. So we have millions of catalog size, and this is like an approximate number that we have put together to give some idea of our size. The catalog size that we have is 100 millions of items. We are looking for 100K QPS. We have various stores. Each product has multiple offers. And if we talk about mappings, there are billions of mappings that come together that we are trying to store. So as I mentioned briefly about backup in the previous slide, want to further emphasize on that. So the product identification service is writing to its own cluster, and we are running a periodic backups from the primary cluster of product identification. The important thing for us backup was we wanted to get the cross shard consistency. So if we have multiple tables and we have different shard keys, we want to get the same snapshot across all tables, same state, so that we don't have data inconsistencies for our backup. So that was a key requirement for us to have cross shard consistency. Also, let's say we have periodic backups of 3 hours. If there is any issue happened after the first checkpoint of backup, we needed a way to restore all the transactions that happened after the checkpoint. So we are also collecting all the queries as an incremental update from product identification service through Kafka route from Akka Stream, and also writing that to Azure Data Lake storage. So when any issue happened, we first of all restore from failure and then replay all the deltas from Akka Stream. And Akka Stream has really come very useful for us because as we could scale to the amount of data that we are getting from the service and write it in the data lake. So that was about the architecture. I'll hand over to Ashish to cover more on productionization and challenges that we face during productionization. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, everyone. So in this slides, we'll be talking about how we did the productionization of our cluster and region. We did the 3-region setup. And as we discussed earlier, these could be private or public cloud. In a typical setup, YugaWare platform manages these servers. Walmart uses OneOps as a PaaS layer, which is platform as a service. OneOps is used for both private and public cloud. So we configure our servers in OneOps and then present it to YugaWare. And from there on, YugaWare manages them for the Yugabyte data center, for the Yugabyte cluster. If there is a node failure, OneOps will replace the node. And it will make sure that the DNS name is maintained, but the IP address might change. Initially, there was an issue with this as YugaWare was only capable of entering servers with the IP address. We worked with a Yugabyte team to configure servers with host name rather than IP address. And that really helped us in solving this problem. Now, when you use DNS queries could sometimes cause issues. We worked with Yugabyte to apply DNS caching and implement permanent fix for DNS performance issues in Yugabyte DB. Initially, Yugabyte binaries were placed in local disk on a node. Local disk is not persisted. We moved Yugabyte binaries to distributed disk, added steps in OneOps workflow to configure recovered node with appropriate settings. YugaWare includes capabilities for alerting and monitoring, but we used Grafana to further customize visualization and alerting. And Grafana container, which we use, can be installed on the YugaWare server itself. Now, in terms of testing, we tested node failure and make sure our read and writes are not impacted. We also tested multiple node failures and even a region failure to make sure our read and writes are not impacted. So we did some configuration tuning in order to customize the Yugabyte DB as per our requirement. And these are the few flags we configured considering our requirements. Yugabyte team was very helpful in making those decisions. And most of our flags were related to multi-region settings. For benchmark, we use E16 compute and use the approximately total data of 1 terabyte. We were able to achieve throughput of 25K per second, and transaction average was 400 milliseconds. Our latency was 700 milliseconds, and CPU utilization during that time was approximately 70%. We were able to get the throughput of 120K per second and latency average less than 5 milliseconds. And for 99 percentile, it was around 35 milliseconds. Final thoughts, we're looking for future scales and requirement and evolve architecture with read replicas. Thank you.
There's a question from Krishna. Is your application is multi-write across regions? Yeah, so if you look at the way we have set up, it's a multi-region setup. And when the write happens, basically with the Yugabyte, it uses the consistency model, right? So when we have, at least we need a 3 region because of the quorum model they use it. And when the write happens, it ensures that 2 regions are written, then only the acknowledgement is given back. So maybe, I'm not sure, does that answer the question? If not, maybe you can. So there are 2 new questions. Okay, I think, yeah. Let's see.
Yeah, so latency, I think follow up, right? So latency on regions, we had basically approximately like 70 to 100 milliseconds. So that is why most of our write time that we have put in our benchmark is also higher due to that because of the cross latency. And since it was doing multiple shard writes, so secondary indexing was there. So when we did benchmark, we kind of put together 4 queries with having secondary indexing. So which was having different shard keys, also doing cross TC writes. So involving all of that, the 400 millisecond that we have put is kind of, covering that.
And the one of the thing we did to increase the write performances, as you looked in the slide, we made sure that all the leaders are in one region because our every write include multiple row or multiple tables in a single transaction. So that has really helped us to get a better performance. Even though there are the write, as Divya mentioned, it incurred the cross DC. And one of the things to consider here is it's again depend on how far is your every region is associated. In our case, the latency was slightly high because of the internode latency is slightly higher.
Yeah, I think there was a question on a Black Friday. Do you want to answer that? Like, what was a Black Friday and Cyber Monday peak like this year, given that this is COVID year?
Yeah, I don't think I have the answer or the number for that, Karthik, but yeah, I think it should be available in the public, but I don't have the number. I don't think maybe anyone here.
Yeah, we'll be able to share that number. We are doubtful about. Yeah, but it's definitely much higher than the regular traffic. We can consider like 10 times kind of at least to be the regular traffic that we usually get during peak time. Yeah, 5 or 10 times more. Yeah, but actual number gonna be difficult for us to share. Yeah.
Are you doing...
Next question is how much time it takes to scale up and scale down for your benchmarks. So I think scale up and scale down is basically we are having Akka stream as or Akka HTTP as a layer, right? So and we were deploying a Kubernetes. So application layer is pretty much easier for us to scale up and scale down. And DB wise, we were having a lot of room because the cluster that we set up was pretty much taking a lot of, and it's pretty horizontally scalable. It's easy to add nodes and get right? Get the tablets be shuffled. I think Ashish can add more on it because as we tried to add node, it was pretty much quickly added, right? Ashish, do you want to add?
Yeah, I think his question was how much time it took for us to put the data in and then data out. There's another question I see why the E16 VMs were picked up for benchmarking. So that was a balance between the smallest available E8, and we want to make it a smaller point of failure. So if a node fails, it doesn't make a huge impact on the cluster. Next one is, do the write operation get write only on master T server across different regions?
So on the master T server across different regions, because the write operation, there's a master T server is there in only one region, right? And the write is not only on the master T server, it's also on the follower, but it always goes with at least two of them. So that's why we always say that one region goes down is technically not a problem, but more than one region going down, we have a issue for write operation. But read, definitely we have, there is a concept of follower read which Divya mentioned. So we enable the follower read to ensure that the read can continue. Even though the multiple regions are down, the read can go from the follower read. And again, there are multiple parameters can be applied for the read operation, like what can be the latency you can accept or how much far behind you can be there to get the read data. Does that answer the question? Yeah, I think as Kannan has mentioned, it's only keep system catalog, but yeah.
I think there is one more question, I think, on above. Are you using Yugabyte only as OLTP?
So right now we are using that for Yugabyte, as we looked at, we are using for a use case right now for a more of a online transaction processing. Yes, that's right. And we are exploring that in one of the model is where we want to use the Yugabyte's read replica capabilities, which can help us to scale and provide a more read scalability. So if we anticipate 100K or 200K reads per second, we should be able to achieve that with not getting the right traffic going into that region. So that is how we are trying to use achieve more read scalability. But right now we are only using Yugabyte more for the transaction use cases. I think the question on backup and recovery, maybe that's kind of we have done in a very different way. Maybe Divya, do you want to add more on that? Yeah.
Sure, Dhruv. So basically, as we mentioned in the slide, so the backup is we try to take two kinds of things, right? One is backup, which is periodic backup, which is from Yugabyte. And the way we have done is we have Azure utility being deployed on YugaWare server, YugaWare nodes itself. So it could take the backups every 3 hours and get to the Azure data lake. And we could recover from Azure data lake back to when the issue happened to the nodes, right? But we want to collect deltas also, because just recovering backup won't be enough for us to move ahead because otherwise we won't be at the same state when the issue happened, right? So we want to be at the same state. So any issue happened after the backup, we need to collect those transactions. So the way what we are doing is, there are different ways we can do it. So the way we decided is we collected all the queries that the application is doing and collected all those queries back to Azure Data Lake, like hourly or periodically, partitioned by every Kafka partition, so that we could scale easily when we run the Delta recovery. So let's say every partition we create separate folders and separate files to collect it. So when the issue happened, we want to first recover the backup, and then we are running a Stream to run those queries again, which happened after the checkpoint. And we are running those queries parallelly, so to get a bigger throughput, so we could reduce the time as much as for our recovery.
Yeah, and one of the key thing, just want to point on the backup is when we started, the backup was not really a transactional backup. That was one of the key feature was introduced by Yugabyte. I think I don't exactly remember the version what it was, but that has really helped us because we really want is the transactional backup at any point of time so that we have the entire snapshot And as Divya mentioned, we configure it. It can be configured at any time, but we took a sweet spot of 3 hours backup. And so at any point of time we want to recover, we recover the data from 3 hours and have the periodic, the delta after the 3 hours, we replay and get the data up to date.
Yeah, so basically what we are doing is the database is basically the application, right, which is writing. They know what is the final query because we have a transaction query, right? Because that is the good part of Yugabyte that we wanted to do is that let's say we are trying to associate 3 keys to the IDs, right? So we are doing multi-row inserts. So that all we are trying to do in one transaction. So in the final application has done this one transaction writes as part of each request. So all of those request we are collecting, let's say as a JSON or as a blob back to Kafka. So in Kafka we don't worry about how the blob is collected, and all of that data we are storing back to Azure Data Lake. So basically you have a queries and you have all the parameter values that you wanted to replace during runtime with those in the queries, right? So that we are also sure that we don't recreate our prepared statements while we are replaying, right? So yeah, so prepared statement is like not having those runtime values. So when any issue happens, you just run those transactions with the attributes that you have got from in the blob. So yeah, it becomes and so we are using Akka Stream at both the places. Akka Stream from application is writing to Kafka. So from Kafka, we are running Akka Stream to write to Azure Data Lake. And then from Azure Data Lake, also we are running another Akka Stream where the source becomes, so in the first time, the Kafka was a source. The another time, the Azure Data Lake itself is a source. So that was a little trickier for us that how did we expand the Azure Data Lake, but we could able to expand because at least we were running in one pod. So that was fine for us to scale as of now. Yeah. But there are different options to do it from Azure Data Lake. You can run Spark jobs. You can run different kinds of ways to recover the data back to Yugabyte because you just want to run those queries again. Anything else you want to add today?
I think yeah, you covered pretty much on that. So it's just we want to keep like an incremental, like a log of transaction, and the mechanism can be anything like from the blob store. It can be, as you mentioned, like Spark or anything. But we just picked up the streaming reactive stream because we have all the stream is already built, so it was an easier adoption for us to reuse the same stream component and rewrite back to Gigabyte.
Yeah, there's one more question. How have you done any benchmark on multiple databases on a cluster? So basically, I think functional wise, yes, when we started, we tried to run benchmarks, but there were certain requirement key features for us that was not meeting, right? We are running separate benchmarks, other like Cassandra and all of it, but I would not mention here because the functional requirements that we had in the end, the features that we had, that itself, and the numbers that we were looking for, throughput and latency, was met with the Yugabyte.
I think the key thing is the functional requirement, I would say here for us before even going into the benchmark, because we want the main transactional multi-row capabilities. So that was the one criteria. And when we did it, some of the databases were not able to get there. So that's why we were aligning towards the Yugabyte.
So I think I would just add one thing here, right? So write consistency was very important for us, but the read replica was like we see the power of read replicas, right? We could be co-located, we could get in low latency data, right? So so for read, we didn't had the requirement that consumer have to read from leaders. So that is why the read replica we could see really strong power to expand and scale and get data in low latency. So yeah, our throughput and SLA was going in the right direction. Yeah.